Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing good. Today I've got a very special guest. It has been a while. Me and Daisy have tried to plan this for like such a long time, but we've both had such a busy schedule. But thank you so much for coming on my channel and joining me today. How are you doing?
Yeah, really good, thank you. Thanks for having me on. I've followed your channel for a while. I love all the content that you've been doing, and I messaged you a while back and tried to arrange something, but like you say, when you're in the season, it's quite busy, isn't it? So it's
Yeah,
probably this is the perfect time for us to do it with it being that off season. So
yeah.
I'm really glad that we got to have this chat today, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's going to be good. I always think it's good after a season because you can kind of reflect on things now. It's been a little while since it's ended because I know when it's ended, you might feel a bit disappointed about things, but you have enough time to reflect. And I wanted to start off there first of all. We will speak a bit about the signings and a bit about next season, the Olympics, but I just wanted to initially get your thoughts. And for me, the season ending, I felt obviously happy to win a trophy, but I just felt very disappointed because the season before, a lot of us, I think we could accept the fact that we had so many injuries and, you couldn't control that. But this season, it felt like we had a great squad, some great players, Palova, Russo, who actually did really well. And we just didn't really, get out the season what we wanted. Like, how did you feel about it?
Yeah, I think like you say, when you come out of it straight away, it's hard not to be disappointed.
Yeah.
It's hard not to come on that with that like disappointment bias. But I agree with you completely. I think obviously we look back to what the season prior, obviously the Wolfsburg game. Disappointing that we lost that, but obviously a different feel really, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Sort of it was quite an optimistic feel that that was gonna be the start of something big. Obviously, not just the attendances, but also the
Yeah.
performances that we were putting out in, like, the Champions League. I think the biggest disappointment, the Champions League qualifiers, perhaps we were a little bit naive in that at the start of the season, that we could just sort of get through that and we know we just deserved a place. Really, obviously, there's the women's football has become more competitive, and I think that's obviously played into it a little bit. I do
Yeah.
think with the squad that we have, the players that we have, the new signings that we made, I was disappointed with this sort of like lack of consistency that a lot of
Yeah.
like I think a lot of fans were the same, weren't they? It's that idea of that
Mm.
one week you'll be getting the best Arsenal team that you've probably seen in a while, especially, at the Emirates. We had big performances against Chelsea, Man United, and then we go away to we go to against West Ham and we
Yeah.
sort of have the complete opposite. I think that was the real issue for me was that lack of consistency is, we should be really to challenge with Chelsea especially and obviously Man City as well. You've got to get those. I mean, what the most frustrating thing is, I was also the head-to-head record. We won the most, didn't we, out of the three teams. We could go and take on Chelsea and Manchester City and get something out of that, and then we would just crumble in those smaller moments. I think that was the frustrating part for me.
It was so weird because we did so well with like beating the bigger sides, but like you said, the West Ham one, it was like for me that was the most surprising because if you look at it, on paper as well, we do have the better team. We are a lot stronger than them. But the fact we weren't even able to beat them, it was so disappointing. The Spurs game as well, when we lost, we did have a lot of difficult times. We've had a lot of ups and downs, and I think it's hard going to season, like, what do we expect? Because I feel like with Jonas, like, I'm not ever saying it's all his fault because players are responsible too. I'm very much in the boat where next season, I think if we have a similar season to this one, I do think we do have to maybe, consider options with him. But how do you feel about him? Because especially with the Miedemar situation, a lot of fans, have sort of turned against him a little bit. I mean, I had my doubts before that. I just felt quite disappointed with the season in general. But what are your thoughts on Jonas in general?
Yeah, I've had a lot of time to reflect because, like we were talking about before, you sort of get those moments where maybe you're a little bit frustrated in the moment, and that reflects on sort of how you feel about managers. And coming actually into it like a few months later, I
Yeah,
think for me, I see next season as make or break. I think how
yeah,
we
me
get on
too.
in the very early part of the season will sort of dictate how I feel about him. I do think, looking at the overall like performances, there's positives, right, to take from it, but
Yeah,
obviously, when you look at, like, Emma Hayes and Chelsea, they were even when people had written them off, they continuously found a way, and with a
yeah.
team like Arsenal, I feel like you need a manager who can do that, right? You need a manager who you have the the trust and the belief in, and I obviously think the Miedemar situation sort of was it for a lot of people. But obviously, more recently, there's been a lot more come out, hasn't there, about the story? There was more
Yeah,
story than we first thought, and I think if you separate it as like him as a person and the club and the way they handle that situation, and actually the performances, if he doesn't impress the early start of the season for me, especially, if we're going out of competitions and
yeah.
missing out on trophies again, that's where I would sort of say maybe potentially. But the problem is as well, who do you bring in? That's a difficult
Yeah,
question.
exactly. I couldn't think of someone who I'd bring in as well. That's the tough thing. I think Jonas started off really well at Arsenal. Remember that FA Cup final, we obviously were really poor in it, but he was able to get us to those finals. And I think last season as well, you look at it and you think, we didn't have Champions League, so we should have, prioritised as well. An FA Cup as well would have been great to win. You look at the final as well, Spurs United, which is amazing for football, but I think we're good enough to get to a final and win it. And I think we've got to sort of, I think Jonas has got to sort of make major improvements next season. And yeah, I think a lot of us do feel like it's make or break. Like I've always wanted to support him and I've wanted it to go well for him. But I think with Miedemar leaving, and if she goes on to have a good season with Man City, it will feel even worse. I mean, I think as fans we can say, I think we've accepted that she's going and she's at Man City, and it was in a way maybe our fault. I don't know if it was like a mutual thing. I'm still unsure about that, but um, yeah, I think it's going to be a really tough season. But I'm sort of excited as well because we'll get to see more of the players. And talking on a new player that signed called Enti, I mean, for me, that signing is exciting. Like I know when
Yeah.
we sort of knew about it for a few weeks before it was officially announced. I mean, obviously it's really nice that players want to come over here to play for Arsenal, even though we're not really. I know we're sort of challenging, but we're not really won as much as Chelsea. But how do you feel about the signing? Do you feel like she could make a big impact in next season?
Yeah, I think it's a statement signing, and when I look at her as a player, I think quite underrated at Barcelona. Obviously, she was there for like
Yeah,
10 years. She did a lot for Barcelona and scored a lot of goals, and she was there in a lot of the big moments. I mean, that is what I see as the most important thing that she brings to this Arsenal side. It's experience. I know people say that sort of in a cliche way, but if you actually,
yeah,
if Arsenal are to compete in the Champions League, which I would say obviously alongside the league, and I mean they're all a priority, but the Champions League is obviously a big one because I'm ignoring last season, I'm looking back to how we've done, and I'm thinking there's a
yeah,
chance in the Champions League, and I think she brings that. And also I think with Arsenal looking at last season, scoring goals was a problem. We created a whole lot. We had a lot of the ball. We were sort
yeah,
of just sort of I think it was just sort of sitting around the edge of the area and waiting for that opportunity. But
yeah,
when I watched, I know we might get into this and talk about the Olympics. When I watched Mariona more recently, that the one thing that she does is the ability to just drive into the box and say, "Actually, I'm going to have a shot." And I think that's something that Arsenal have obviously looked at and thought, we need somebody here who's not going to be afraid to actually have a go. And I think that that's something that I'm really excited to see. And also the link up with other players.
yeah,
If she builds those relationships with Russo, Mead, if Mead plays
yeah,
there, obviously however that goes, we don't actually know what that squad's going to look like, that starting 11, but
yeah,
builds positive relationships and with other players, and I think it is going to be a fantastic signing. And I think she just needs to
yeah.
adapt to the league as well, doesn't she? Because that is a difficult task.
Yeah, it is. That's another thing I always say when players come from different leagues, you can't predict how it's going to be for them. It could be tough, they could adapt really quickly. So I think you do have to give the player, a season and time to settle in first. But I completely agree with you. I'm really excited to see it. I think it's really nice as well. Feel quite flattered that she, Barcelona are obviously amazing. They're so successful, but she still wants to have that new challenge here at Arsenal. And I'm excited to see her play. I think it'd be really good. Obviously, she is off her signing. But for you, like when you look at the squad we have now, in order to kind of win a league or maybe get quite far in the Champions League, how many more signings do you think we should make in the summer?
I always say minimum two, and obviously looking at a goalkeeper, but I think
Yeah,
that is something that Arsenal have obviously already considered. We've obviously heard the rumours that are circulating around that. I think obviously that was made even more of a priority when we had the exits in the summer. Obviously, D'Angelo and Kayla Marquez went as well, so that
yeah,
obviously is something that Arsenal looked at. They wouldn't have let two goalkeepers go without knowing that they were going to potentially bring in another. I would also probably look at that midfielder situation. Obviously, rumours come out and it changes your perspective because obviously you just want the best players to play at Arsenal. Obviously, we've seen the Kira Walsh one, we won't ignore that. But I think looking at the midfielder situation, yes, we have a lot of different people who might be able to play there. Obviously, we've seen Kyra Cooney-Cross. You've got Leah Valti coming back from injury. You've got Kim Little, who's just Kim Little, really, isn't she? But I'm looking
Yeah,
at that Pullover injury as well and thinking there are good players, but are we missing just like another? I know. On her day, like Leah Valti is an incredible player and she plays so well. But looking at injuries, and obviously with Kim Little sort of getting older, and then you're looking at can these younger players fit into the squad? I think a midfielder would be a really statement signing as well. And obviously bringing somebody in who's got that really like world class caliber about themselves would also be a statement signing as well. I know there's a lot of people who've
yeah,
talked about a winger, sort of a fast, sort of pacey winger who could play on that left hand side. But I think for me, it depends where Jonas plays Mariona, because if she's going to play that left wing rather than playing the number 10, bringing a winger in would sort of be wasting it really, because I know that we've got Ford and we've got Lacasse as well who can play on that side.
yeah.
So I know there'll be people who'll argue for that, but I think it depends
Mm.
where he chooses to fit everybody into that starting 11, really.
Yeah, I definitely think the goalkeeper's like the number one for me because obviously with Sabrina leaving, I did feel a bit sad about that because it's very hard to say this, but it's very weird. Sinsberg and Sabrina, they're both very different. I know when we started the season last season, it just went really bad with both our goalkeepers. But
Yeah,
Sabrina was obviously a great choice. But I think with Sinsberg, I always say when she's confident, she is probably one of the best goalkeepers in WSL. But when she lacks that confidence and makes those mistakes, it's very hard to have her as a goalkeeper on the pitch. So I think it's the right time to maybe consider her maybe second choice throughout the season. I know to start off we probably will play her as that number one, but I think we've got to definitely that position is something we do have to sort of think about. And I know a lot of fans as us have spoken about it for a while. But I'm with you. I think a lot of our team now, if you look at it, I feel like we're so close to kind of, not finishing, but you look at the squads, I mean, you do think that we can win things soon. I mean, I know Palova obviously absolutely devastated because she had an incredible season, and I know that these ACL injuries unfortunately do happen. But how do you think we'll kind of cope without her next season? Because for me, she was just a pivotal part in that midfield, and I know the likes of Kim Little, Volti, they're incredible, but they do get injured quite a lot as well. So it'll be quite hard in that midfield without her next season.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I think a lot of people, praise Pullover for her performance, really making herself sort of stick in that side, and I think Jonas saw that too. So that's kind of difficult. But I do think, looking at the younger players that we've got, none of them are quite ready. Maybe
Yeah,
barring sort of Kyra obviously plays for Australia a significant amount and has done over the Olympics as well. I think can she make that step up? Potentially, but then I'm looking at Palova plays quite a different position to what we see, Cooney Cross play. So really that sort of role that Palova plays is hard to replace with the current squad that we've got. So potentially we know with an ACL injury it can be difficult because you can't quite predict how long a player is going to be out, right? So bringing in a replacement is hard because you don't really know sort of where that player will then fit once Palova returns, and hopefully that injury is sort of
yeah,
resolved, quick as possible, and she gets sort of the like medical sort of assistance that she needs with that. But it's hard to replace a player in that situation because in 11 months' time, bare minimum, what do you do then? You've got two
yeah,
players, especially bringing in sort of a starter to that side. You're going to need to bring someone who's extremely good, and then what do you do sort of after that? I obviously think Kim Little will continue to play. I think that
yeah.
as long as she stays fit, she can go in that side over anybody. But I agree with you. I worry about injuries, and I think how they manage that recruitment, and also the young players that they've got like Katrin Cole, things like that. How do they handle that? It's going to be difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I think with our lone players as well, like especially with Gio as well, it's quite hard for them to fit in the team and sort of perform on the level as like Pullover would, and it's very hard to give them game time. I mean, I know they've both been on loan, Everton away in Spain. I'm pretty sure Gio went, so it's tough to balance that. I mean, I think the midfield, obviously, Kim Little. I think unfortunately. I reckon she probably has maybe a few more seasons in her, but I think at the moment, if you look at it next season, I think, she is the perfect option to have. And Volti as well has had an incredible season. And obviously, I'd love Kira Walsh to be in that midfield, but I don't think it's going to happen. It feels more of a dream, But yeah, I wanted to ask you a bit about next season because for me, I just feel like we've definitely got to win a trophy. I mean, I know the Conti Cup is sort of our trophy, and don't get me wrong, I love winning trophies, and it's a good trophy to win. But I also feel like as a club, we should be winning maybe like an FA Cup as well or a league title as well. What would you say your expectations are? I mean, especially if Jonas, it's his kind of make or break season.
Yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because obviously, like, you go into it with a team like Arsenal, and if you make the right signings, you'd expect us to challenge for a significant amount of those sort of competitions, but
Yeah,
obviously when you start getting further in other competitions, that hinders your process in the other ones. So obviously we, like you said earlier, with the Champions League, even if you go out in the Champions League, that's obviously extremely disappointing, but then you should use that momentum in another competition. That doesn't tend to happen really, does it? You kind of go all in with them all. I would say for me, the Conti Cup obviously holds a special place in my heart, but if we were to lose that to make room for a different one,
yeah,
obviously the fans I think would take that in a heartbeat. I think I looked at the FA Cup as like an opportunity for the fans and as a community to go to Wembley would be insane. Like that would be
yeah,
incredible. I think for Champions League you can be optimistic, but there are some extremely incredible like Barcelona, Leon, even Chelsea under under Sonia, as much as I hate to say it, they've got a high chance that competition because
yeah,
she's got the experience. We don't have as much experience, especially over recent seasons. Obviously, the Wolfsburg one was incredible, but obviously we did lose
yeah.
out in the end. I think I just would be happy to progress to a
Mm,
reasonable if we got to a difficult opponent, I would accept, if we gave it a good go and we lost,
yeah,
similar to the Wolfsburg situation, I wouldn't be disappointed in that. But the league, I think this is the time to take it, right? Everybody's
mm,
coming into this as a competitor. It's going to be competitive. You've got a new Chelsea side, you've got a
yeah,
hungry Manchester City side, you've got those teams that are creeping up slowly. Obviously, you've got Liverpool who finished fourth. You've got, other teams as well that might potentially push somewhat through the season, but if any
yeah.
time we could do it, it's now, right? When everybody else is also going into that with a chance to try and win it.
Yeah, I completely agree because I think the league, obviously that would be kind of my number one like trophy that I'd love to win. It's so hard though, like you said, because there's so many teams there in the mix because Chelsea obviously are probably, the favourites, but you see Man City as well with Miedema, obviously that's incredible signing with, Buddy Shaw, Hemp, Kelly. But then
Yeah.
you also look at teams, like Spurs and Liverpool, they've really pushed throughout the season, and I think we've got to sort of go a bit above third and really try to push them to the end. Like if we didn't win it and we went all the way to the end and we got close, I'd feel proud and I think you could take that. But I think because we kind of fell behind, like you said, losing those points, we shouldn't really be losing it. It's obviously it's disappointing, isn't it? And I know next season, I think that's what we should be doing. We should look at the teams that are lower down and sort of like the low block teams, and we need to find a way to win. But I also think throughout the season, the likes of like Beth Mead, Williamson have come back from a massive injury, and don't get me wrong, they've done really well. And I think it's sort of good for them to have some time, especially I think with the Lionesses. I think them not being in the Olympics isn't a bad thing. I think it's sort of maybe is looking on it could be a good thing for them to have a break because the schedule is so hectic. Like I've seen in a few games that some players have picked up the ACL injury, and I wanted just to ask you a bit about the schedule because for me, I think it's so kind of I can get why these players are getting so many injuries now because they don't really ever get a time to rest, do they?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one, and obviously, like with ACLs, it's the one that they're looking into because there's clearly so many things that are involved with that. But in general, just even watching the Olympics, like you said, there's so many like even just not even ACL injuries, just other injuries as well that are coming
Yeah,
into play. It's so difficult because you're trying to grow the game, right? You're trying to put money into it, you're trying to get something out of it, and one of the ways that they do that is by more competitions, more more things like that. So
yeah,
it's sort of like two sides really, and it's hard to find that balance. You want to make that more money, you want more investment, but also you've got to remember at the end of the day, these players are people, right? They need to be treated sort of like they are people, like they do get injured, they need to rest, they need time off. I think the Olympics is tough because if you look at it compared to the men's, obviously the
yeah,
men's don't take it as seriously, and that's something that obviously maybe could be looked at. But then I see, you know, the Olympics of women's football, it's huge, right? And these competitions are huge. So it's sort of two arguments, and you can kind of see where both people are coming from. But at the end of the day, I think the priority is sort of the health of the players mentally, physically. How can we prevent that? You know, how can we protect that really in other ways?
Yeah, it's so tough. I think, like you said with the Olympics, like for the women's team, I absolutely love watching it. I know last time we obviously got quite far in it, and
Yeah.
I think in general women's football, they always take every competition very seriously, and I think it's a shame obviously if the Lioness has not been able to be there, but I kind of look at it now and I think it's obviously maybe a blessing that they have that rest, because I know when you get back to the WSL or whatever league they're in, the schedule is going to be, hectic, especially if they're in the Champions League, because I know it's very tough on the players. And I do hope next season, injury wise, that we can manage okay, because I know we did pick up a lot of injuries as well. And I wanted just to mention a player before we do speak about the Olympics. I know Lena Hurtig is obviously, she has been out for a while, and I sort of, it didn't surprise me when she came out and said it was personal reasons, because I think if it was an injury, I'm sure the club would have maybe said she's out with an injury, should be out for a while. But what did you make of like what she said, obviously? And I know fans have obviously speculated about it for a little while, but it's obviously really nice to see her back too.
Yeah, I think the priority is always like like I said, the mental health of the players. Clearly, it seems like that obviously that's a little bit presumptuous, but from her statement, that is kind of how I see it. Is obviously she needed some time
Yeah,
off. We don't as fans we don't need to speculate too much, especially now we've got sort of that statement, and also we've seen her back in training. I think that's sort of a nice relief, isn't it? That obviously you
yeah,
have these players in the squad, you worry about them as people, and you hope that they're okay. And I think that's just nice to have that reassurance that she's getting back to she's with the right people and she's got the right support. And I think
yeah,
speaking about her as a player as well, looking at what she might potentially bring to Arsenal, we haven't seen much of her since she signed. I think a lot of people maybe sort of just in a way like had forgotten about that, had kind of just like in all the chaos that goes on during the season, we just completely forgot that we were missing a player. Obviously, she signed for quite a lot at the time, and she. I think she didn't really get the chance to sort of fit into the system to impress.
yeah,
We saw glimpses of what she could do. I saw Leicester last season, we had the 6-2 comeback. We saw a little bit of her then, and
yeah,
then after that, obviously, things happened and we didn't see much of her. I think, obviously, it's clear that it seems she's staying at Arsenal at least for next season.
yeah,
This could be a chance for her, couldn't it, to sort of, really impress and potentially even have an impact. And I doubt she would sort of come straight into that side, especially with the new signings that we've made. But when we're looking at Arsenal and sort of those games that we're potentially not going to be able to sort of win easily, and those games that we might be down or losing, we could look at someone like her right from the bench and think she might make an impact.
yeah. I think obviously before she had some time away, I think fans had, not every fan obviously, but I think some fans sort of writ her off a little bit, because I suppose she had a lot of injuries as well, didn't she? And we didn't really see her enough to sort of make a big, judgment of her. But like you said, you did see it in glimpses when she did come on and play. I think if she didn't have a lot of injuries next season, I think it could be maybe like a breakout season for her. I think she could do really well, but it's very tough with the schedule with the injuries. But I do think even if she doesn't play, even if she's not the starter, she's a great option to have off the bench. So it's obviously really nice to see her back. But like you say, as fans, we really care about the players and hoping that they're okay. So it's obviously really nice to see that she's back and she's okay now. And obviously, the Olympics, I wanted to just speak to you a bit about that. How do you feel about it? Obviously, for me, the Lionesses aren't in it, but I also feel excited about watching like the Arsenal players play like Australia. I really hope they do win. Actually, I'm quite rooting for them. Are there any teams that you think could do it and win and get gold?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like my favourites, I would say at the moment, having watched those first games, obviously we can't ignore
Yeah, you can't. Yeah,
Emma Hayes. Obviously, we've had our tussles with Emma Hayes sort of over the years, but looking at that side, the talent that they've got, the young
yeah,
stars that are coming through, I just also think, like you say, watching the Arsenal players, I'm rooting for them individually. Watching the
yeah,
US. I'm watching Emily Fox, and I'm like,
Yeah,
if
she's
she
great to
brings
watch.
that form in, yeah, exactly. If she brings that form into the season, obviously we saw a lot of what she could do second half of that season once she signed for Arsenal. I think that was just the start of what she could do. I think she's an incredible player, and we've really done well there. She's exactly what we needed in that position. And
Yeah,
also, looking at other teams as well, obviously Spain are always going to be favourites, World Cup, World Cup winners.
yeah,
And then obviously, like, I'm a little bit upset that we haven't seen much of Laia Codina. Obviously, she's been benched. I think with her being a young player in that, I know it's hard to get into that Spanish team,
yeah,
but being a young player, the Olympics has always been about that young talent. We've seen different teams bringing off players and bringing on young players and giving them a chance. I would like to see her play. And Australia have got a tough test ahead of them, haven't they? Obviously, that it's going to be difficult to get out of that group and then progress. And they've had a glimpse. We've seen sort of glimpses of their weaknesses, really, which we haven't really
yeah.
seen for a while.
Yeah, I know defensively, like, I mean, obviously it's great to see other teams kind of go for it and surprise you, but I think defensively, to concede that many goals is quite, shocking. I mean, I suppose if they come up against a team that's quite difficult, like a Spain maybe, or whoever they have, I think, I would like them to win. I think it would be, it's nice to see. Obviously, there's a lot of Arsenal players in that team, and obviously it'd be great for them. But yeah, I think defensively is where think would they manage? I mean, it'd be interesting to see. I mean, I know obviously Emily Fox. I think it'd be good. I'd love whoever kind of gets gold to be, an Arsenal, a few Arsenal players in the team. I mean, Emily Fox is a great player. I mean, I know when we signed her, obviously I didn't know too much about her. I knew she was really talented, but she has just been incredible throughout the season. And I think, yeah, she's a great player to watch. And Kadina as well. I think, yeah, like you said, it'd be hard for her to kind of play all the time in the team. But I know for Arsenal, I think she's been really amazing. I know at the start it was a little bit, she struggled a little bit, but she got adapted into the team. So I'm personally like so excited to see who does win. But going into next season, it'd be good to see the girls come back, and whoever wins, it'll be. Yeah, it'll be really good. I'm really excited to see it. Obviously, it's quite weird not kind of cheering a team on, but wanting, the Arsenal girls to do well. But yeah, I'm excited. It'd be really good. But before I do round the show up, I thought you could tell people a bit about what you do, because I know you have a channel and you do a lot of like chats about Arsenal women as well.
Yeah, so I do the Arsenal, the Gooner Fanzine Arsenal Women podcast. I do that every week, just talking all things Arsenal women. It's a great way if you want to sort of
Mm.
like round up what you've missed maybe in the week. This week, obviously, we talked about similar things to what we discussed, Olympics, Lena Hertig, and I write for the Gooner as well. So I do a lot of their like tactics and analysis content. For anyone who's interested, I kind of make it sort of easy to understand, because I know there's a lot of people who come into it want to understand like why Arsenal
Yeah,
lost, why Arsenal, conceded goals, and I
yeah,
try and explain it sort of in an easy to follow and nice style. So yeah, I mean, follow me on. I use the Twitter the most, or X, or whatever whatever we call it. I use that the most. I post all the content on there and all of my work, and yeah, I'm be following Arsenal as much as I can this season, and I'm really looking forward to this season. I'm quite optimistic.
yeah,
Obviously, we're a bit naive, aren't we? But we're
yeah,
got to be, and I think I'm looking at on
yeah.
the pitch as well. Like, what can we achieve this season? It's going to be huge.
Yeah, I think you've got to be excited going into the season, because you look at the players we have. I mean, Russo's a great example. Like last season, we saw so much she brought to the team, and I think next season she's going to be even better. And the likes of Beth Mead as well, Ruben Moore had a great season, and I think, as much as we want to win trophies, I think if we see improvement next season, I think that'll be the main thing. But yeah, please do, those that are watching, do check out the stuff you do as well, because I do love your podcast as well. It's great. It's actually really nice to see other Arsenal women content, because I know a lot of some Arsenal fans mainly speak about the men, so I think it's quite refreshing to see more women content out there. So I love that from you. I hope you guys that will watch this back and have enjoyed this. It's been really nice. It's making me getting ready for the season now. I kind of want it to start soon, but
Yeah, same.
the Olympics will be. I'm excited to see who will win, and yeah, it's just nice to see the Arsenal girls do well. But yeah, I hope you do enjoy this video, guys. If you're new here, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe, and I'll see you all in my next video. Bye.